begin the program right away with intraday numbers from the stock markets, and starting from Africa, where the major markets we track are all trending higher at intraday. Here in Nigeria, the all-share index was over 1% in the green at intraday, while South Africa was 3.98% positive. In Egypt, the EGX 30 was up by 4.1% at intraday, while the Kenyan stock market closed Monday's session down 2.28%. And the markets in the Middle East also saw strong gains at intraday, with the Abu Dhabi and Dubai indices up over 5.5% each. In Qatar, the index was up 3.13%, and the Saudi index was also 1.83% positive at intraday. And European markets traded sharply higher today as well, as investors hope that the region could be seeing a plateau in the coronavirus outbreak. Let's talk to Conrad Boesen from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange for more market headlines. Good afternoon, Conrad.
Good afternoon, BC. Thanks for having me back on Channels TV.
The stock markets in Western Europe are continuing a strong recovery, and that's based on hopes that the coronavirus has peaked or might be peaking shortly. What's fueling those hopes?
You know, a number of news and also signs from different parts of the world. In China, the first time since the country started publishing corona figures at the beginning of January, China reported no new corona-related deaths today. Here in Europe, Austria and Denmark are announcing that they slowly will restart their lives and their economies after Easter. In Austria, small shops will be allowed to open again after the Easter holidays. And in Denmark, kindergartens and primary schools are probably going to open after Easter as well. Here in Germany, the Chancellor is a bit more reluctant than in those countries to announce when a restart will be possible, but the finance minister already says that a huge stimulus program for the economy is in the making to help businesses to come back to life after the corona break is over. All this combined is giving investors reason to be a bit more hopeful again. The German share index DAX, you can see it right behind me. It looks like a sideways movement. It actually is, but after a huge jump that you probably can't see on the graph right now of 3.5% this morning on the week. So since the beginning of trading yesterday morning, the DAX is up nearly 10% right now.
Conrad, now in Brussels, the European Union's finance ministers are discussing today how to tackle the financial burden of the crisis. And so far, the government bond yields of countries like Italy are not indicating that investors are particularly nervous. Why is that happening?
Because of a very significant, strong intervention by the European Central Bank, which reported that in March it purchased bonds worth 66.5 billion euros. That's 3 times as much as the ECB normally purchases. And if we look at the government bonds among those purchases, 35% of the government bonds that the European Central Bank purchased in March came from Italy. And that's only the beginning. Because of the corona pandemic, the ECB has introduced PEP, which is the Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program. And in this program, unlike in the regular asset purchases, the ECB has no limits, not when it comes to absolute size of purchases, nor when it comes to of which country the ECB buys more or fewer bonds. That, of course, means that at the moment, speculating against Italy is simply useless if investors wanted to do it because of the strong backing of the ECB. The spread, which is the difference of the government bond yields of Italy and Germany, is significantly below 2% on a level that everyone on the markets can easily live with, or everyone especially in Italy.
But despite the crisis, a number of private equity deals and venture capital financing rounds are proceeding, and they include Airbnb and a German producer of disinfectant. Tell us more about that.
Well, the German firm is, of course, particularly of interest here in Germany at the moment, and not only because it's from Germany, but because it's producing disinfectants. The name of the company is Schülke, a company created 130 years ago in northern Germany, in Hamburg. It's now owned by the French firm Air Liquide, and Air Liquide has put Schülke on the market a while ago in autumn. So, of course, due to the corona crisis, there was a lot of discussion going on here in Germany whether this deal would happen, given the super high demand for disinfectants right now, and of course, given the difficult environment for all sort of financing right now. But today, several news agencies report that Schülke will be bought by Equity, EQT, the large private equity investor from Sweden, for at least 900 million euros. Airbnb is reported to have achieved another round of investment of $1 billion US. That, of course, was also not a given if we take into consideration that Airbnb has seen its business suffer significantly due to the corona crisis. You know, this platform for housing and for holiday apartments. This platform has significantly deteriorated in business, but it's become obvious that the venture capitalists stay by the side of Airbnb, and that's of course positive news also for many other startups, which at the moment are very nervous whether they can achieve financing or not.
Thanks, Conrad, and we'll do this again tomorrow. Let's cross over now to the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in intensive care with coronavirus as world leaders continue to send messages of support. But let's see how the markets are reacting to all this. And Juliana Olayinka is ready to tell us from our London studios. Good afternoon, Juliana. Tell us, what are the market numbers saying at the moment, and what are the major drivers?
Good afternoon, Busi. Well, the equities started off on a really good foot this morning, and at intraday it seems as if those gains are not losing. The FTSE All Share is up 3.57%. The FTSE 100 is up by 2.79%, and the FTSE 250, the domestic market, is up by a whopping 6.28%. In currencies, the pound is also up on the dollar by just over 0.5%, down on the euro, though, by 0.29%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.42%. When it comes to the gains in the FTSE, that's really down to the airlines at the moment. EasyJet, that's in bull market territory. Their shares are up by 25%, and the BA owner IAG, their shares are up by 13%, and there has been some sentiment amongst some traders that seem to believe that in some of these hotspots, COVID-19 could be dwindling, which means that people, fingers crossed, will start travelling again soon, which is why the sentiment is there. We've also had a couple of information dropped by ONS, the Office for National Statistics here in the UK, showing that the housing market stayed flat in March, month on month, house prices, and Britain's labour productivity in the last quarter of 2019 rose by 0.3%.
And now, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson battling with his health, where does that leave the Brexit trade deal?
If you don't mind me leaving the trade deal aside at the moment, Bissy, because we did just get some information from the Prime Minister's official spokesperson. Of course, here in Britain and across the world, people have been waiting for this information. Some good news, we hope, is that the Prime Minister is stable and in good spirits. He is still indeed in intensive care. There were some suggestions that he could be suffering with pneumonia. Downing Street said that isn't the case. He isn't on a ventilator, but he has still been given some oxygen to aid his breathing. There was also some information about just what role Dominic Raab, his second in command, would be doing. We know that they said if there is war or chance of war, Dominic Raab will have full say-so, but he will not be seeing the Queen. There's usually a weekly briefing. He will not be doing that. And considering we are in a health pandemic. If Dominic Raab is ill, then Rishi Sunak, which was quite a shock to some people, will be the next in command. So I just thought it was important I mention that. But, you know, going back to what you were saying about Brexit, despite everything that's happening, just this morning, Downing Street did confirm that there would be no extension to the December the 31st trade transition date. We don't have much time, of course, to try and get a deal together. If there is no deal at the end of this year, then Britain does come crashing out of the bloc in some sort of World Trade Organization deal, which means basically we'll be starting from scratch. We know the chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, has been ill. On our side, David Frost has been ill. And at the moment, whether people like to admit it or not, the Prime Minister is incapacitated. So there are lots of concerns and worries. But officially, according to Downing Street, December the 31st is the out date.
Now, how are the UK airlines digesting the call by more than 250 trade unions and environment groups opposing plans for bailing out the aviation industry?
Well, it's an interesting story. Unsurprising, these 250 unions have come from 25 countries across the world, and they've written this open letter really just pleading with government not to be too lenient on these airlines. They say when they're making billions of pounds worth of profits, they're doing that in private, but anytime they want to bail out, they're relying on the public, and it's not good enough. They want these governments to start putting some basic measures on any money that they're giving these airlines, rather than just giving the companies access to these furlough schemes. They should be asking them to pay more tax, giving workers more rights, and particularly with these unions, they're really focused on the global climate emergency. And they're saying that a lot of these airlines haven't done enough to receive such a massive bailout. So it's an open letter, and who knows how far it will travel.
We'll see how far it travels, actually. Juliana, thanks for those updates, and we'll see you again. The stocks in Asia rose on Tuesday, and rising hopes the spread of the global coronavirus pandemic may just be slowing. Mainland Chinese stocks led the gains, with the Shenzhen Composite surging 3.184%, while the Shenzhen Component added 3.15%. The Shanghai Composite was also up 2.05%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose 1.88% as of its final hour of trading. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 gained 2.01%, and the Topix Index was also up 1.96%, ending its trading day at 1,403.21. In South Korea, the Kospi was up 1.77%. The S&P ASX 200 in Australia ended its trading day 0.65% lower. And in the U.S., stock futures pointed to a Tuesday opening jump in early morning trade, building on a steep rebound in the previous session. Earlier on, futures for the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 639 points, pointing to a gain of more than 569 points at today's open. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures also pointed to opening gains. We'll turn our attention to the commodities markets when we return in just a moment. Please stay with us.